Hi, you're watching the development vlog for Shokken, a restaurant waitlist management tool that is currently available on Google Play Store and soon to be available on iOS App Store. This is Bill from Shokken, and this is week 68 of development. The current status, as I just mentioned, Google Play Store has approved my access to production about a month ago, so the app is live and ready for download and use on Google Play Store. However, iOS App Store kept giving me issues. This is my second submission, and it was a second denial as well. Last week I didn't have time to work on it. My friends came from land afar, and we had a good time together. And this week we're back to business. So I want to talk a little bit about the app review feedback from iOS App Store and what their concerns are and what my plan for updates are. So there are six issues with the app submission. I'm going to go through them one by one. First one is Guideline 2.3.2, Performance Accurate Metadata. And this is where when you're submitting an app, especially if the app has in-app purchases, the in-app purchase section allows you to put in promotional images for when you want to do promotions on the in-app purchase items. And I put in, because I didn't have other icons or logos made for it, so I put in the exact same icon and logo for my app in those promotional images. And this is apparently not allowed. And this is partly my own, well, this is 100% my own fault for not understanding what the section is for. In other words, it's for promotion as opposed to for a description of this particular subscription tier. And the remedy is actually fairly straightforward. If I'm not planning on doing promotion, as I'm not right now, I just need to remove it. So that's easily done. That takes a couple clicks in the App Store Connect, and that's rectified. The second violation is Guideline 3.1.2c, Business Payments Subscriptions. This is another what I would consider minor details. They require a EULA, a Terms of Use or End User License Agreement, to be present in the App Store listing description. In other words, it's not so. To be clear, my app does have a EULA and terms, and they're displayed both on a website as well as on a paywall when you're trying to purchase a subscription in the app. There's a link that you can click and it takes you directly to the terms. However, this is different from my research from EULA, and End User License Agreement. That governs specifically the relationship that you have with, as a customer of the app, have with Apple as well as the app writer, who was me. So that needs to be not only included in, well, that needs to be included in the description of the app. In other words, when the user browses your app listing on the App Play Store, on the iOS App Store, they need to see that link. You could use, now Apple tries to make it very easy for everybody because this is a legal thing, right? Like I don't have an armada of lawyers there writing a custom EULA for me. So Apple has provided one for me conveniently, but I need to link that in my description. But that's also very easy to do. I just modified my App Store listing. In the next review, I need to reply and provide a screenshot of me rectifying that problem. So that's easy to do. The third violation is Guideline 3, Business. Specifically, they have questions with regards to my business practice and business model. And they specifically have concerns with the pricing of the two subscription tiers that I've offered. And the two tiers that I have are the monthly subscription, which is $200 a month, and then a quarterly subscription, which gives a nice discount, $500 per quarter. Sounds like a lot of money. I understand that. Most apps, the subscription like 10 or 20 bucks, or well, it's actually going up now. If you think about a lot of apps, they've gone from like just a couple bucks to tens and dozens of dollars. In any case, so there's a lot of sort of low value apps on the App Store that's looking for a quick cash grab, and I think that the guideline that they have right here is to prevent that kind of cash grab. If you remember, Like when the App Store first came to the market, there was like I Am Rich app, which cost, I believe, $1,000. And all that it does is it shows you an icon with this app, I Am Rich. In other words, if you buy this app, you can show off that you're rich. But the app itself, in Apple's opinion, doesn't really provide much value. So I think they're trying to weed that kind of app out. Now, to justify the cost of the app, there are really two ways of doing this. Number one is from the user side. In other words, what kind of value is this app providing to the user? And the other way to justify the cost of the app is the cost of doing business, right? Like how much it costs me to provide the service to the user such that the price can be justified. The value one is in the marketing part, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time here with the app reviewer. And frankly, that's a really sort of hand-wavy stuff. It's really hard to justify value, right? That's what marketing is for, is to convince your potential users that it's something that's worth spending money on. And now, obviously, this is very subjective if you think about it, right? Like I understand that there's a study that came out some time ago with regards to the enjoyment of wine is directly correlated with the cost of the wine. In other words, if you're not a trained sommelier, your enjoyment of the wine is not necessarily the quality of the wine, but rather, your knowledge of how much it cost. So in other words, the value itself, your enjoyment, which is the value of the wine. The wine provides enjoyment for you. That's the reason you're drinking wine. Has very little to do with how expensive or how difficult it is to make the wine. It has very much to do with the pricing of the wine. So, I don't want to get into those weeds. And ultimately, I believe the app would be beneficial to busy restaurant owners to increase their throughput and then reduce their host stands headaches. But that's not here for the review. That's for my TikTok reels and my business marketing stuff. So the other way to justify the cost is, of course, discussing how much it would cost me to provide the service. And frankly, this is actually quite scary because the costs have already started ramping up for me. I use a number of backend services, not including the development tooling that I'm using. If I'm thinking about my backend, I have Supabase subscription, which is not just a straight up subscription anymore, because I mentioned a couple of update videos before that I now have 3 different environments for a very robust deployment, development and deployment workflow, CI/CD workflow, to prevent the sort of the disasters that can come along with cottage industry software developers, where they only have one backend, and then to save money and also to save complexity, and then they develop and deploy straight onto that production, and then something breaks, customers can't get to their services and that they depend on, then all hell breaks loose, and it's just not a good look. So I have 3 different backends, and I'm essentially paying 3 different backends at the same time. That's with Supabase. Costs will continue to go up as I start using storage buckets, because I'm implementing a new feature with regards to menu scanning storage and AI interpretation of the menu. That's going to go up. I'm also using Netlify for the website side of things. When the guests scan a QR code to join the queue, I'm not British, to join the wait list, they will see a website, and that website is hosted by Netlify and built and deployed by GitHub. I also have a GitHub deployment workflow that now costs money. So these are the sort of the recurring monthly fixed costs, and these are very minor. And one of the biggest costs is my SMS notifications. In other words, when a guest scans a QR code and joins the waitlist, they receive a notification, welcome notification, and then they receive a notification when their seat has become available, and then they receive a notification when their positioning waitlist is either canceled or they have been called, right? So 3 notifications per customer. And if you think about a busy restaurant on a busy night, it can easily go into hundreds. So in other words, every night per restaurant, peak, I'm expecting thousands of messages. And if you think about SMS messaging costs, I understand that nowadays, with consumer phone plans, you have unlimited texting because they just assume that you don't, you're an individual, you're not going to do volume texting and stuff. But if you're to use SMS text messages for business purposes, for transactional text messaging, you have to, there's no plan that you can buy that includes all your text volume. You have to pay per text. And in other words, what I'm offering my customers is a flat fee for any number of customers that they served. In other words, they don't have to worry about the surge in costs, but I'd have to worry about the variances in terms of the SMS fees that I pay to my upstream service providers. And this can get quite expensive. If anything, I've done some modeling, and unless I have a large number of subscription pooling, I may be underpricing if anything. So I think that this is sort of the justification I'm going to use in my response to the Apple app review team to explain to them why the app costs so much for a subscription. This is not your sort of venture capital backed type of run and gun drive-by shooting type of app. This is legitimately created by a solo developer who's looking to provide a long-term sustainable business practice that could benefit local and restaurants nationwide. In any case, so this is Guideline 3 Business, and I'm going to explain it with the cost side of things with me and not necessarily dig into the value that the app provides to the customers. Okay, so the fourth violation is Guideline 3.1.2a, Business Payments Subscriptions. The app reviewer alleges that the minimum duration of a subscription in the app is 7 days. And I remember doing research into this. I don't remember seeing that. All that I remember seeing was if you have a subscription, if you have an auto-renewing subscription, the minimum subscription duration has to be 7 days. And that corresponds with when you're going into the App Store Connect, creating your subscription tiers. That's essentially what it is, right? They limit you there so that you can't create anything shorter than 7 days. However, my app does provide shorter non-renewing subscriptions that are 1 day and 3 days. As I mentioned earlier, the monthly subscription is $200. What if you just have one busy weekend, right? There's really no reason for you to pay $200 to handle one event or one busy weekend. And that's why I'm offering the shorter duration for those folks who are just looking to use it one time. And I think this is just aside, this is a sort of a pet peeve of mine. A lot of the modern service providers have gotten into this mindset of getting people hooked to things that they may not be necessarily using. That's not, and obviously for additional revenue, and that's not really sort of what I want to do. If you're not using my services, you don't have to pay me. That's not, my goal is not to make that for you. For the vast majority of the customers, I do expect them to continue to use it because, they're a restaurant. If they're busy, they'll probably continue to be busy and the app will continue to provide value. But if you're like somebody who has an event, a very busy event that wants to use this over a weekend, you have the choice. You don't have to, go whole hog and buy the whole monthly subscription. In any case, so after, again, carefully reviewing the App Store guidelines, I don't see any requirements for non-renewing subscriptions to be to be longer than 7 days. So I believe this is a reviewer error, in which case I'm going to point it out. I'm not going to change it specifically to sort of bypass the review because it does fundamentally change the idea that I have for this app, right? The convenience I'm looking to provide for the customers in this app. So this is, I'm going to argue. Perhaps I will use some other terminology and maybe say that, hey, this is a one-time purchase as opposed to a renewing subscription. And so that they can understand that this doesn't fall under the umbrella of renewing subscriptions such that it has to be 7 days or longer. Okay, that's the fourth problem. The fifth problem, Guideline 3.1.2a, business payments. Oh, I already talked about this. Oh, well, okay, that was the fifth one. Sixth one, Guideline 5.1.1v, data collection and storage. This is, and I believe this is a good thing that Apple does. So Apple requires that if you require the user to create accounts, which my app does, if you don't have an account, how are you planning on managing your restaurant wait lists, right? So you have to create an account with my app. And if you require your user to create an account, or even have the facility for them to create an account, you have to respect their privacy and provide a way for them to delete the account should they desire. And that's the feature that my app didn't have. So this is like, the ask is fairly straightforward. I just need to implement a way for users to delete it. I just implemented that last week. It didn't turn out to be as straightforward as I thought, because it's a fairly, the blast radius is pretty large if you think about it, right? The app needs to initiate a delete request. It has to authenticate this particular user. The request then would have to have a bearer token being ingested by the backend, verified, authorized, and then only delete that user's records. And it's a cascade delete. And you're going to make sure that the records that need to go have to go, and the records that need to stay for auditing purposes have to stay, right? So I believe that's done. I don't believe, I'm pretty sure that's done, because I did it. It's not like I have an alter ego that comes out in the middle of the night doing programming. That is done. So, and I think that's a good thing for the users to have. Eventually I was thinking about adding that at some point, but this requirement asks me to put that in right now, which is fine. So I believe I have addressed all the problems that they have raised. And before I submit, the only complication is that at the same time as they raised those issues, I have been developing, right? Like, my development doesn't stop with the app. And I started implementing new features into the app. And my app currently does not have a feature flag feature. In other words, anything that goes into the app would have to be turned on. And I'm in the middle of implementing a new feature. And if I want to ship the corrected binary to Apple, the features I'm developing have to be ready, tested, and go. Because I don't have feature flags. I can't turn them off into the live in a live app. I'm paying a little bit of the cost here. And my goal is to have those features implemented very quickly, because I don't really want it to sort of drag it much longer than I already have, because who knows, the next Apple review might come back with a series of rejections as well. So I want that to be done, and then ship it as quickly as possible, and then resubmit for the next round of reviews. And after that, I will put in configuration management for my app. In other words, feature flags. And I'm looking at ConfigCat. I like how I'm using RevenueCat for revenue side of things and ConfigCat for config side of things. And after that, then I would be able to continue developing in the app and ship features that are not fully ready, but turned off in the live app binaries. So that'd be okay. Speaking of cats, I have a cat right here. Ooh, you sneezed. Yo, you're so cute. You're so cute. Aw. Anyways, this is it for this week. I'll see you next week.